Hi everyone, it's Heath, and in this video I want to talk to you about some of the best orc miniatures I have found for book-accurate orcs from Lord of the Rings. And as you may know, I am a big Lord of the Rings fan, and one of the projects that I had started years ago, and it might be fun to continue one day, was to try to collect a series of miniatures for my tabletop gaming that represented different aspects of the Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth in general as accurate to the books as I could possibly get them. And of course, orcs are the quintessential bad guys, so of course you're going to have orcs on the table. But you know, I've studied orcs quite a bit, and in one video I've already talked about Are Orcs People that's up on this channel, and I need to continue that series. But you know, there are a variety of different breeds, or shall we say subspecies of orcs. They're not all the same. You can tell where orcs come from by some of their physical attributes, and some of my favorite orcs in the entire series are Grishnak and the orcs that are with him and are similar to him in physiology, that come from Mordor and are with the Uruk-hai of Isengard, which are transporting Merry and Pippin. And that's talked about in my favorite chapter of The Lord of the Rings, which is undoubtedly the Uruk-hai, which is in the Two Towers. I think my favorite book of The Lord of the Rings is The Fellowship of the Ring, but undoubtedly my favorite chapter is the Uruk-hai, where Merry and Pippin are captured by orcs and they're being taken to Isengard. That chapter actually provides us with a lot of insight into orcish society and physiology. There are a variety of different types of orcs present in that chapter, and that helps us to distinguish things like the Uruk-hai from Isengard, and of course whether or not Mordor has Uruk-hai is very controversial. We may deal with that in another video, but we've got the Uruk-hai from Isengard, we have the goblins, the smaller kind from the north that come from the mines of Moria, and then we have Grishnak and his like, which come from Mordor. Before I go to the Two Towers, though, let me give you this quote from The Hobbit. There in the shadows, in a large flat stone, sat a tremendous goblin with a huge head, and armed goblins were standing around him carrying the axes and bent swords that they use. This is from The Hobbit, from J.R.R. Tolkien. And of course, this is talking about Goblin Town and the Goblin King of Goblin Town. But, you know, ever since that, when I first read that as a kid, the idea that axes and then bent swords, to me scimitars, are the classic weapons of orcs. And of course that is specifically talking about Goblin Town there, but I've always kind of generalized that across orc kind. Of course it seems like the Uruk-hai of Isengard use short, straight swords, but when not told otherwise, like in that case, I've always generalized and thought that axes and bent swords, meaning scimitars, are very orcish weapons. So that's always stayed with me. Now let's take a look at some of these quotes about the physiology of Grishnak and these large loping orcs from Mordor. In the twilight, he saw a large black orc, probably Ugluk, standing facing Grishnak, a short, crook-legged creature, very broad and with long arms that hung almost to the ground. Round them were many smaller goblins, and this is from The Two Towers, the chapter The Uruk-hai by J.R.R. Tolkien. And so this right here, to me, typifies a very specific kind of orc. One that is some of the main soldiery of Mordor. If you happen to be of the opinion that Mordor does not have Uruk-hai, what are their main kind of soldier orcs? Well, they kind of look like Grishnak, these short, crook-legged creatures, very broad, with long arms that hung almost to the ground. Then later, same chapter, from that direction there now came hoarse cries, and there was Grishnak again, and at his back a couple of scores of others like him, meaning that wasn't just Grishnak that looked that way. There are others who are like him, long-armed, crook-legged orcs, and they had the red eye painted on their shields. So you know, these are orcs from Mordor, and these to me still typify the main kind of soldier orcs. Later, same chapter, a long hairy arm took each of them by their neck and drew them close together. Dimly they were aware of Grishnak's great head and hideous face between them. His foul breath was on their cheek. So here again we have this idea of the long arms, long hairy arms of this particular type of orc. Again, same chapter, the strength in his long arms and shoulders was terrifying. He tucked them one under each armpit and crushed them fiercely to his sides. That's Merry and Pippin. A great stifling hand was clapped over each of their mouths. So what miniatures do I find that best represent this type of orc? Undoubtedly the line from Thunderbolt Mountain. I love this line of orcs. Let's take a look. I love this line of orcs because they are armored well. I'm one of the people who really believe that the general armor theme of the Middle-earth at the time of the War of the Ring is very much mail-clad. We don't have plate armor like was used a lot in the movies. I'm talking about, the book-accurate stuff here. And so this line of Thunderbolt mountain miniatures has the orcs clad in mail. It has them a little bit in, some kind of scale, which I'm also fine with. One of them also in kind of a primitive kind of plate thing, but I love that. We've got a predominance of mail here. They've got their broad shields. They've got the Spangen helms on their head, which is exactly the kind of thing that I think of the orcs wearing. I think they've got great faces. You can see the tusks. The shields are perfect for painting the red eye on, like has been the case in many of my miniatures here. They've got scimitars, which I think is perfect. A lot of their primary armament, if they're not using spears, is using axes and using those bent swords, which are scimitars, which I think is just perfect. You've got the kind of bent stature, you've got the long arms, you've got the gangly legs. To me, this perfectly represents the great orc kind of soldiery of Mordor. I call them the uruks, because these aren't uruk-hai, but they are the great orcs of Mordor, to me, as I've always interpreted the passages. I put these guys on some hexagonal bases. They're actually magnetic because I wanted to do a GURPS Lord of the Rings game, and I was going to use these as my main orc soldiers. I think if you're trying to represent book-accurate Lord of the Rings orcs, you have to include these guys as the main soldier orcs of Mordor. This is what Grishnak is, and all of the kind like him. I really love the low fantasy, dark age look of these orcs. To me, it is perfect for Middle-earth. I am so happy to have them as part of my collection. What do you think? What are you using for book-accurate Middle-earth orcs? Let me know down in the comments. I love hearing from you and how you extend the conversation. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and all of that jazz. It really helps a lot. But also, please check out The Cultists, the web series on this channel about modern-day D&D playing Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who just don't understand. Season 1 is on the channel now. But also, please check out my YouTube channel. I have over 150 videos on tabletop games and the fantasy genre. If you've enjoyed this video, you might enjoy many of them as well. I look forward to seeing you for them and many more videos to come.